Designed in a manner that is almost quintessentially 80s, the Beechcraft Starship was a strange but revolutionary executive transport aircraft that became a staple of cutting-edge flight technology and style, though unfortunately, in spite of its outrageous looks and innovative flight characteristics, the Starship would ultimately end up being one of the biggest commercial failures in history, and is today mostly unrecognized in the wider aviation scene. During 1979, the Beech Aircraft Company, also known as Beechcraft, dominated the small business aircraft market, with the firm's King Air twin turboprop obtaining 50% of the share, while the remainder of the business turboprop market was divided among Cessna, Piper, Mitsubishi, Swearingen and Rockwell. However, the company's best-selling King Air design was about 15 years old, and with such a large market share, the Beech executives reasoned that they could only lose this share in the future unless they took a dramatic leap forward, thus commencing from 1979 work on a new pressurized all-composite twin-engined business turboprop, a brand new generation of aircraft based on the latest building materials technology and a bold new innovative design. Thus began the most ambitious new development project in the history of general aviation, with the leading design having its engines mounted in the rear to reduce cabin noise, while also including an aft-positioned main wing on which to mount the engines and balance lifting forces. With conventional rudders being considered to make huge sounding boards for the propellers, control of the yaw axis and vertical stabilizer function was assigned to tip sails on each wingtip, while for the fuselage, the King Air's large cabin had always been a major selling point, and the new Beech design had an even larger one, approaching the size of a medium jet. Increased size brought increased weight, and the decision was made early on to build it using innovative new composites for its favorable strength-to-weight ratio, while Burt Rutan, the foremost authority on tandem-wing all-composite pusher aircraft at the time, was approached in 1982 at his company, Scaled Composites of Mojave, California, to participate in the final configuration study. The result was the design for the Starship, with its variable sweep forward wing, all-composite construction, and rear-mounted Pratt & Whitney turboprops, with Beech beginning in the preliminary design of the full-scale prototypes, while Scaled Composites was engaged to build an 85% scale proof-of-concept prototype to flight test the configuration. The proof of concept was completed in record time, and made its first flight in late August of 1983, followed a little over a month later by the new aircraft, then dubbed the Starship, being introduced at the National Business Aircraft Association convention in Dallas, Texas, with the proof-of-concept Starship appearing to many as a very real aircraft, being as large as a 90 series King Air, looking good in flight and clearly performing well. However, the proof-of-concept had no certifiable systems and no pressurization, and had not even been built out of the intended materials, this aircraft essentially being a large flying wind tunnel model designed for a program of 100 test flight hours or less, although it flew 5 times that long in practice. The proof-of-concept Starship's appearance at the Dallas convention gave the impression that Beech was much further along than it was, and gave credence to an optimistic schedule the company had announced for certification by 1985, though in reality, by early 1984, many subcontractors still had not come close to delivering their components on time, and there was concern that some might not be able to deliver at all. If there was to be a Starship, Beech realized it would have to develop it by itself, which resulted in substantial delays as Beech gained experience with the properties and manufacturing techniques required for resins, fibers, adhesives, composite honeycombs, and sealants unique to the composite aircraft. In a more conventional program, production would have taken a back seat to development and certification, but the nature of composite construction, such as making parts in molds, dictated that Beech build the Starship prototypes with production tooling, which gave assembly an equal priority, while to accommodate production, the company added 250,000 square feet of manufacturing space. Further delays came from unexpected complications, including correcting a pitch damping problem and developing a stall warning system, at the FAA's insistence, for an aircraft inherently designed not to stall, the FAA watching the Starship's development very closely, and were particularly demanding due to the Starship being the first FAA-certified composite aircraft. For instance, the FAA required the generation of substantially more aerodynamic loading data than would have been usual for conventional designs, in order to prove that classical loads analysis could conservatively apply to the radial new tandem composite wing design. However, the FAA did not have established design life criteria for composite structures, and designed a rigorous test program involving the cycling of the test structure through damage expected over 2 anticipated airframe lifetimes, or 40,000 hours, subjecting it to damage repeatedly and measuring its ability to carry load. One of the greatest challenges to building and certifying the all-composite aircraft was lightning protection, with it being found that unprotected composite material could be blown apart by a lightning strike. Substantial studies and testing being done, including a fuselage section that was subject to a 200,000 amp simulated lightning strike in Raytheon's test facility. The solution was a mesh of fine wires under the first layer of composite skin, and a ground plane system to shield the electronics, with the lightning current being allowed to flow through and out, leaving only minor surface and cosmetic damage at the strike point. More than any other general aviation aircraft of its time, the Starship was a child of the computer age, with its design, development, manufacturing, operation and maintenance all relying heavily on computer input, a major portion of which was done on a system called CATIA, which provided a three-dimensional design environment and interfaced with tooling. The first full-size Starship made its maiden flight on February 15, 1986, followed by the second in June of the same year, and the third in the early spring of 1987, with the course of the 2-year flight test program seeing almost 2,000 hours accrued, and on June 14 the Starship received FAA certification, with the first production Starship, November Charlie 4, entering flight testing in late 1988. The 5.5-year development program cost more than $300 million and millions of man-hours, though for its investment, which included mastering a new technology, building a new manufacturing facility, and training a workforce, the Beechcraft Raytheon Combine would only build 53 Starships, production being halted due to poor commercial demand, while of the 53 units built, only a small handful were ever actually sold. Of the reasons as to its commercial failure, the price of the Starship in 1989 was $3.9 million, similar to the Cessna Citation and Learjet 31, which were pure jets of similar carrying capacity and range, while the Piper Cheyenne, a turboprop aeroplane of similar capacity, was less expensive at $2.9 million. Other factors included the performance, with the Starship being 89 knots slower than the Cessna Citation and 124 knots slower than the Learjet 31, while the Cheyenne was also faster than the Starship, as was the turboprop-powered Italian Piaggio P180 Avanti, which incorporated a configuration somewhat similar to the Starship and had comparable capacity. Further compounding the Starship's woes were prevailing economic conditions, the Starship having been introduced in a period when the American economy was entering a periodic slowdown, and sales of all high-ticket items such as business transportation vehicles were seeing a substantial drop-off. Lastly, the flight manners of the Starship were not appreciated by many pilots, who noted its significant phugoid tendency, in which the nose continually rises and falls during otherwise level flight, as if it were hunting for the correct flight attitude. Many of the aircraft were eventually leased by Raytheon, which allowed the company to control their distribution and operational life, though the firm considered the cost of supporting a commercial fleet of just 53 aircraft with necessary parts and flight training to be prohibitive, while leasing the aircraft allowed Raytheon to effectively recall and ground most of the fleet at the end of their initial leases. In 2003, Beechcraft deemed that the aircraft was no longer popular enough to justify its support costs, and thus recalled all leased aircraft for scrapping, the company also stating that it would buy back privately owned Starships, almost all of the recalled units being ground up and incinerated at the Evergreen Air Center boneyard located at the Pinal Air Park in Arizona, though the planes contained little aluminium for recycling. However, not all private operators would be contacted, while Raytheon's spin-off, the Hawker Beech Corporation, would maintain technical support by phone, but no longer offer parts support to Starship users, while Rockwell Collins would maintain full support for the AMS 850 avionics suite, and in March 2008, The third of the 5 remaining Starships completed RVSM certification, returning the aircraft's service ceiling to the original flight level of 41,000 feet. For the surviving units, Starship Model 2000A, November Charlie 5-1, was used as a chase plane during the re-entry phase of Burt Rutan's Spaceship One, while several Starships have been donated to museums since the decommissioning program began, with the Kansas Aviation Museum receiving the first aircraft in August 2003. Starship November Charlie 4-2, flown by the architect David Schwartz for many years, is now at the Museum of Flight in Everett, Washington, while Starship November 214 Juliet Bravo is displayed at the Southern Museum of Flight adjacent to Birmingham International Airport in Alabama, and Starship November Charlie 27 is on static display at the Evergreen Aviation and Space Museum in McMinnville, Oregon. As of September 2020, only 6 Starships remained airworthy, with November Charlie 33 and November Charlie 50 being located in Addison, Texas, though the former was subsequently registered in Mexico and then brought back to the United States under the FAA experimental category as November 903 Sierra Charlie, while the other airworthy Starships are located in Oklahoma with November Charlie 35 and 45, Colorado with November Charlie 51, and Germany with November Charlie 29, though this unit is registered with the FAA by a company in Delaware. In the end, the Beech Starship proved to be a somewhat flawed attempt by the company to maintain a share of the business turboprop market to which it had unassailable dominance and was showing no sign of losing. The response of the company to create a highly innovative model to support and possibly replace the King Air, taking Beechcraft into unknown territory when it came to composites technology and the use of canards in combination with pusher engines. Nevertheless, the resultant Starship, despite its commercial failure, was a major advance in the history of composite aircraft construction, while also introducing many superb design features that made the model essentially impossible to stall. And though today this machine receives little attention in the wider aviation world, one cannot deny it was truly a machine at the very cutting edge of aircraft innovation.